For never was a story of more woe than this of Adrian and his Shane. Oh, Connor. Anyway, yes, we're going from bard to verse. We're going all Shakespearean on the comedy slab this week. Stay thy mirth, dear friend. Hear me out.
Can I just say,
Zoons.
I don't want to interrupt and interject at this early stage, but I was convinced that you were going to go, all right, and welcome to the comedy slab.
I thought I'd leave the authentic West Midland accent to your good self, Lloyd. So if you haven't guessed already, assuming you have some passing familiarity with certainly the British comedy scene as seen on TV, we are putting on the comedy slab, the slab of comedy on which we dissect and review fine comedies. It's Upstart Crow, which is the Ben Elton creation with David Mitchell in the lead as William Shakespeare. I'm not allowed to ask Shane's opinion of said show until we've heard the first of 3 audio clips from it. But I should say, we are the Skype-crossed lovers, or at least Skype-crossed likers. Oh, nearly gave it away there.
Now, I'm sorry, but that is just brilliant. I love that.
Oh, bless you, bless you. Anyway, he's nearly in Shakespeare country. How far do you think you are, roughly, from Shakespeare upon Avon, Stratford upon Avon?
Oh, I was going to say from Warwickshire or from Stratford.
Make it sound as close as you can, please.
Because I'm closest to the Warwickshire border, because I'm not far from a place known as Four Counties. Not Four Candles, Four Counties.
You have to be careful how you say that.
Exactly, yes. Which is the border, because they're all a funny shape, the border of Warwickshire, Staffordshire, West Midlands, and, what's the other one? Derbyshire, probably. There's like a curious little corner not far from Measham where they all kind of converge. So I'm guessing I'm not that far, actually, from Warwickshire, because I say it's... in as much as I am at a funny age, Warwickshire has always been a funny shape. So, not that far. But probably quite away from Stratford upon Avon. Yes.
Well, but we'll trade mercilessly on the tenuous link anyway. And, of course, I'm on the doorstep of London in sunny Kent. And, of course, Shakespeare really commuted between the two, didn't he? And there's actually a reference. I haven't got it in the audio clips. I recorded it with a view to playing it out, but there was so much I wanted to squeeze in, and it's just a great gag. You have to enjoy the show, which is on, as we speak, BBC iPlayer for the next few months, the BBC's catch-up service, certainly in the UK, hopefully elsewhere.
I've got a question already, sir, as well, and I'm going to have to bow to your superior knowledge of William Shakespeare.
Well, I don't know. Try me.
Oh, it can't be worse than mine anyway. So, I actually wrote that in my notes. I mean, I'd never heard that before prior to coming across this sitcom, that he'd commuted from. I kind of thought that he was from Stratford, but went to live and work and to ply his trade in London. I never had this sense that he came backwards and forwards. Is that legit then? Is that a thing?
Oh, it's definitely a thing. What I couldn't tell you is how frequently he did, and I'm not entirely sure it's literally true that on at least one occasion the horses of the horse and carriage were replaced by a replacement donkey service. But anyway, I don't want to ruin the gag. You catch the show. It's episode 1, series 1, I should say, or series 1, episode 1. But yeah, I mean, because of course the Globe Theatre, it wasn't quite where it is now, but it's within a stone's throw on the bank of the Thames, and not quite the South Bank. It's the next bit along. I'm trying to scroll a Google map in my head. So he was an actor as well as being a writer, and his career took off in London, a bit like the Beatles. They couldn't stay in Liverpool and be a world act, unfortunately, in a way, because if people outside the UK, I think you probably get the sense anyway, if you've got some passing knowledge of UK culture, is London's virtually a country unto itself. and you could argue has been for hundreds of years, including back in Shakespeare's day.
Or at least that's what people in London would have you believe. I mean, the Beatles, in fairness, went to Germany in order to make a name for themselves.
Well, yeah. No, that's fine.
Which actually is another country, really and properly. But
quite literally.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not sure I subscribe to that. But I mean, Beans is your other passion in the world of podcasting. Is a little thing called the London Podcast. You would say that, sir, wouldn't you?
Well, zoons, I was, 'tis true, born in, within the bounds of London, nowadays known as the M25, which hadn't been born then. I'm biased. But I don't mean it in a sort of course, everything that drops from my lips sounds like I'm being superior. I don't mean it in a superior way. I mean it. I'm actually on your side, especially as I'm sitting outside of London, as I've been forced out by London house prices. One of many reasons to just think that London should be reined in just a little bit.
So we're saying then he did commute, but we're not sure how often, because I'm not sure how long that journey would have taken and at what expense as well at that particular time. I would have thought it would have cost comparatively quite a lot of money, and would have taken quite a while. In fact, the very house that I'm living in right now used to be an old coaching house.
Oh, fantastic! So you're like in a services station, motorway service station.
I am sitting in this. In fact, this very room is part of the old motorway services. From
the M0.
Yeah, I've got all the documents. I have to get the documents out one of the days and have a good old.
Oh, fantastic! You must do
a good old peruse before we knock it down and build a nice new building. No. So I'm not the kind of the impression that this gives is that he's like whapping up and down once a week, isn't it, kind of thing? And so that's poetic license, isn't it? That was.
I think it is. It's literally, almost literally, poetic license. Yes, it certainly feeds that beautiful gag about the works on the line kind of thing. But it would, as part of the answer to your question, it would have taken hours and hours. I mean, it would have been a day's journey, wouldn't it? So, yeah. I mean, so that. At least a day, wouldn't it? I mean, he might have had to stop over halfway. Yeah.
And the other disclaimer that I have to say, and you know, pillory me for this by all means. I'm well used to it by now. In fact, I like a good pillar, but I can't bear Shakespeare. I can't get on with it at all in any way, shape, or form. I really have. I think it's almost developed into, I mean, it was an indifference at one stage, but I think it's actually developed into a loathing simply because when I say to people that of my indifference, they say, oh, that's disgusting, you shouldn't be like that. And it's interesting because we have subscribers from outside of the UK. In fact, we had one this week from somebody to the YouTube channel, listens to the podcast, who I think teaches English as a second language kind of thing. And you know, I think as an ambassador for the country, I should be going, oh, Shakespeare, oh, it's wonderful. Oh, yes, you should. And I cannot get on with it at all. In the same way, and I worked in like Coventry and Warwickshire, which is kind of an area that is mixed up together sort of thing. And I just couldn't. It's like, oh, God, can't do something about Shakespeare again. For God's sake, let it go, will you? In the same way that whenever I used to go to Nottingham, they bang on about Robin Hood all the while. I don't know what it is. I kind of think it's a bit of the Alan Partridge thing. There's more to Ireland than this, and there has to be more to Warwickshire. You know, besides Shakespeare, knobbly staffs, and a giant bear. I mean, that's all I'm saying, really. And so I rest my case.
I didn't know staffs was knobbly. You don't mean as in what we call staffs in the south?
The staff, yeah. The symbol of Warwickshire, for some reason, I don't know if you've ever seen this when you're driving down the motorway, is a giant bear holding a knobbly staff.
Oh, yeah. Can't get the stuff.
You can't get the stuff these days, knobbly or otherwise.
Should be Staffordshire.
Yeah,
the staff.
Yeah. Which is actually a bit of old rope tied in a knot. So that's a weird one for you, isn't it? But there you are. Figure that one out. But yeah, does that make me a bad person? I don't know.
No, absolutely not. You'll notice that you've not. I hope although you might project all manner of things onto me, which I disown and deny, not least that I think London's superior to the rest of the world, and I'm looking down from a great height. No, I know where you're coming from. And my dark secret, which I'm about to make public, is I've only seen 2-3 Shakespeare plays live at the theatre.
Right.
But I know he's a big guy to contend with, and I love the beauty of the bits I know.
Okay.
And it was infectious from my dad. And in fact, I was reading from a book, from a volume 1 of a 2-volume set of Shakespeare that my dad got. I mean, it looked pretty old at the time because it had he got it back in the 70s, and it's literally like me. It's got rough edges. The pages, it was kind of trying to reproduce the old look. So it looked old in the 70s, and with another 40 years aging, it looks like the original manuscript.
Well, it is old now, isn't it? Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. But I would want to ask, I mean, we'll get on to the first audio clip in a mo, and people might think, and I'm intrigued to know whether you think it's a completely different beast, despite being based on Shakespeare, that somehow Ben Elton has worked some magic and made it accessible. We'll see. But have you ever used phrases such as, it's Greek to me, or talked about your salad days, or vanishing into thin air, or you've been tongue-tied, tower of strength, in a pickle? You know where I'm going with this, don't you?
I do, and I know all of that, and I know the whole thing about that. People say, "Oh, well, if he'd have been alive today, he'd be writing EastEnders." Well, I hate EastEnders as well, so
I don't think he would, but yeah.
No,
the question for me is, would he be writing Ben Elton style comedies? That would be an interesting question.
To my mind, he'd be a Jack Rosenthal type thing. I think if he was alive today, that's the kind of standard you'd be at. I think it'd be quite clever comedy, because he was probably quite sophisticated for the time. And I know that he in his works coined those phrases. Now, whether he was a great man and coined all those phrases himself and put them into the popular vocab, or whether he was a great plagiarist and, as writers very often do, took from wherever they went and then put them into his plays, then, people build it up as if to say, oh, this was the guy who invented all of these phrases. And of course, that's a ridiculous thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah, but also it'd be ridiculous to say that we know for a fact every last thing is his crafting. I think it's probably a blend of the two. And then, Ben Elton, I'm sure, will confess, if he hasn't already, if you caught him in a quiet moment or whatever, he'll have heard something on the train that he's worked into one of his comedies, or thousands of things around him. That's what writers do. Should we get on to our first clip and let our listeners decide?
And do you know what? I'm itching to do the headline after that, because I've just got a cracker.
It better be good. It's got to be at least of the stature of a Shakespearean quote.
It's the best I've ever done. It's my life's work, this is. I can happily say, let's just retire and not do another one after this. That's how good it is.
You've talked, you're aware of the phrase praising something to death, yes. I'm sure. Anyway, I suppose this is the setup. We're actually down at Will's London lodgings, and we have the glorious Mark Heap making a very loud entrance and telling us, in effect, what the main story of episode 1 actually is. Oh, and I should add, it's a BBC comedy production from Londinium.
Master Robert Greene is without.
Rob Greene, who doth hate my gutlings. What does he want?
Ah, Master Shaky Poet! A word, if you please.
Shakespeare, Master Greene. My name is Shakespeare.
I know your name, sir. I was addressing you by trade, Shaky Poet. Just as I would address a house builder as Master Builder, or a ship's carpenter as Master Carpenter.
And what would you call a bear baiter, Mr. Greene?
Master Baiter.
See what I did there?
Brilliant, loved it.
I am come on a mission of great delicacy. My nephew, Florian Greene, has fallen for a most unsuitable girl. the Lady Rosalind, daughter of a mere country knight. There can, of course, be no question of such a lowly match, so the boy must be kept from her.
And what part of this unedifying tale of upper-class entitlement is of interest to me?
Florian travels to Cambridge next week to take his place at the university. You must keep him here till then. You see, this lowly boarding house is far from court. Miss Rosalind will never find him here.
I am a busy writer, sirrah. Why should I do this?
Because I am master of the Queen's revels, and if you don't, I will deny your plays a license.
So he's kind of stuffed, isn't he? Really, he's got to do what's asked of him. The other proviso I've got to say with this as well. I said to you, I tried to watch this series and hadn't had much success with it in terms of enjoyment. But I forgot to mention to you, at the time, I was trying to actually lose some weight, and I was watching it on an iPad whilst on a treadmill. So
it could only be you, couldn't it, that setup?
I don't know if it's like comedy aversion therapy. I mean, you know, it's...
I thought you were going to say you were miserable because you weren't eating any muffins.
It's like... I don't know if I'd have said, I only watched it whenever I'd tied heavy weights to my dingle dangle. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's what a ridiculous thing to do. But yeah, and I have to say as well that I'm a massive fan of Mark Heap, as you know, but I really didn't like his character in this. I didn't understand, given, and I think they make reference to it in the plot, given that people don't talk like they do in Shakespeare's plays. I think his daughter says that to him at the start. People don't talk like that. That you then had a character that actually talked like that. It that already started to jar with me as well, really, in there. But you're going to tell me there's some reason why he does talk like that.
Oh, there's massive artistic license all over the place.
Yeah,
that either drives you mad or you buy it and settle into it, and so that headline, which you've built up to the max.
Yeah. You want to hear it?
Yes, me and the rest of the listening audience.
You're barred.
Oh, gosh, you put so much work into that.
I told you it was a good one, didn't I?
Oh, dear.
Did you like it, Mr. Derrick?
So... Yes, Mr. Derrick, yes. That's all we got time for, Basil.
I didn't... It didn't float from... I mean, do you know what? It's really weird because we have this conversation week in, week out where I am a bit of a serialist and you are a bit of a univisualist where...
Gosh, you'll have to decode that. That was more dense than Shakespeare.
I'm making words up as I go along. I thought, well, if he can do it, I'm going to do it as well. I love to catch up with the rest of... in fact, I am currently, for pleasure, outside of the Comedy Slab. Not that this isn't pleasure, of course, you understand. Currently watching the second series of Stath Let's Flats, which we slabbed. So I will go and watch other episodes, whereas you won't. And although I struggled a bit with this, I won't say I hated it because I don't want to be that strong about it because it has got some really good points, which I'm sure we'll touch on as we go through. I didn't get as much from it as I thought, I possibly could have done. Although I did want to go and watch the rest of the series. I did want to try again with it. Ben.
Oh, that's something. Without the treadmill.
Yes, without the treadmill or the weights. It was Ben Elton, come back, all is forgiven, I think, really. You see, I have a bit of a blind spot with Ben Elton's work as well because he always sounds like Blackadder to me. When he writes The Vicar of Dibley, it sounds like Blackadder. If you watch Four Weddings and a Funeral, it sounds like Blackadder. And everything sounds like...
Was he involved in that? Are you sure Ben was involved? I know Richard Curtis obviously was.
Yeah, well, I mean, Richard Curtis just copies what Ben Elton does, doesn't he, really? I think you could say if you're being really cruel. But
which you are.
Which I am being, obviously. But yeah, I kind of... but again, you look at on the positives, you look at the cast is just sublime, isn't it?
Oh. True die for. And a discovery for, or rediscovery for me, is Liza Tarbuck. Very talented comedy actress. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of her when she's on the wireless waves, but she's not playing to her strengths.
I think she's a great actress. I think you're absolutely right, and I think she does something when she's on the radio that she isn't suited to do. I think you're absolutely right, but I think her acting skills are fab. I think the other person that's overlooked an awful lot as well, and he's almost comedy royalty now, is Paula Wilcox.
Oh, yes.
Who plays Shakespeare's...
She's had a good run, hasn't she?
Yeah, God. I mean, I was watching her in Man About the House the other day.
Well, yes, not made the other day, though, was it? We should point out to people not familiar.
By a long stretch, not the other day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
many days.
If it's on ITV3, it has to be pre-1972 to start with, doesn't it? Really, I think so.
I think they're banned from playing anything this century, certainly, and it's way back in the last century. Yes, a strong cast. I was just reminding myself, as I always have to, going back to Blackadder, I'm always name drop. I will name drop, if given a moment, about Mr. Elton himself, because I worked on Man from Auntie. But I always have to think which way round it is with Blackadder, because the first series, as we've commented, I think, before on the Comedy Slab, is quite freaky and very different from all the subsequent series.
It was awful, wasn't it? As well, I mean, it was different, but it almost got the cancellation of the series, didn't it? The first one.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be quite so cruel to it. But then, on the other hand, I'm erring on the side of caution because my memory, I've only seen it once and many yonks ago. It's certainly odd, but that was by Richard Curtis and Rowan Atkinson. Of course, Rowan played all the Blackadders. But then subsequent episode, it says episodes, it probably means series, written by... Oh, hang on, yeah. Were written by Curtis and Ben Elton. So they work together. I mean, look, it's easy to knock Ben Elton as well as praise him. I think there's lots to love, and then there's bits that yes, you do hear the some of the same. I've forgotten the term because I've been up all hours. Of tics coming up again and again, or styles of writing. I mean, I don't know what you thought. We heard a reference to gutling, and then there's I find a slightly annoying thing. They're putting an ington on the end of words. I mean, it's just a running gag, and it's meant to, I don't know, make things sound slightly different so it doesn't all sound like it's 21st century English. Imagine that.
Roistering is another of his favourite words, isn't it?
If you say so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you could pull a few roisterings out of the Blackadder script.
Yeah,
and I think it was mentioned about 3 times in this one episode. You know, you kind of think so. You're right. He's, as people have like visual tics or verbal tics, he's got linguistic tics, I think.
There's probably an ointment for that, but it's
I'd like to think so.
It's a close run thing, though. You sounded like the male performer of female roles just then when you went into your falsetto. I'd like to think so too. I think that might, if I remember correctly, lead us on to clip 2. Should we sashay into that shamelessly? Are you ready for that?
Lead on, Macduff.
Very nice. And may I say, I'm hugely across the 170 miles between us via Skype, admiring your bottom. At least I think that's what you're dressed as. Right. See, it gives us this license. That's the wonderful thing. You can knock it all you like, but it's all very carry on. So we go to clip number 2 from Series 1, Episode 1 of Upstart Crow. And we find Henry Condell as, the man-stroke woman, to coin another comedy title.
Mr. Burbage, I am the senior actor of female roles in this company.
My dear Condell, the ingenue in Master Shakespeare's promised play is a maid of 13 summers, a young bud scarce yet in bloom.
And your point?
I think he seeks an actor that doesn't have to shave his ears.
Good morrow, all.
Oh, don't you good morrow me, Mr. Shakespeare. This new romance you're writing.
Aye, Romeo and Juliet.
Juliet.
As I said, Romeo and Juliet.
Burbage says you want me to play some bloody nanny.
The nurse is a fine comedy role.
Comedy? Ooh. Don't give it him, then.
I can do comedy.
Yeah, but only in London, yeah? Not really Florence, is it?
Yes, we all know you've worked in Italy, Kemp.
Ooh, did I get an award? Can't remember. Oh, that's right, I did, yeah? A proper one. Not English, Italian, yeah? Commedia dell'arte. Heard of it?
Since you became big in Italy, Kemp, an insufferable smugglington hast thou become.
Yeah, but an insufferable smugglington who's big in Italy.
I am the senior lady actor, and I insist on playing Juliet.
Look, the play isn't even finished. I'm stuck on the character of my Romeo. And what's more, as yet, I don't have an ending.
Now that, I got to be honest, I absolutely loved, because that's kind of like that. I'm guessing. I mean, I've not looked it up to find out where it originated from, but this whole idea of Spencer Jones, who of course we slabbed in episode 63 as the creator of the mind of and star of the mind of Herbert Clunkerdunk.
Yeah.
But Spencer Jones doing this pastiche of Ricky Gervais.
Yeah.
I can only presume that that's like an in way of Ben Elton having a dig at Ricky. I mean, it's just genius, isn't it, really? But I mean,
I thought you were going to say, I can only assume they couldn't afford Ricky Gervais.
Right. I never thought of that. They asked him and they couldn't afford him. But I mean, it's on the nail as well, isn't it? I mean, it's a brilliant
If you didn't know,
facsimile.
because our listeners obviously only hearing the audio, if you hadn't seen the pictures, you might for a moment think it was Ricky.
Yeah.
And
but do you know how that came about? I mean, have you seen anything that why they did that?
No, I hadn't. At the time, we were slabbing Herbert Clunkerdunk, and people should both hopefully listen to that episode 63 of the Slab, but also hopefully enjoy, if they haven't done already, via BBC iPlayer, Herbert Clunkerdunk. I was selling it to someone who, I just, because of my other world, working with people from business, I was selling it to someone who's an investment manager, and I was describing the puppetry of the shoes, and quite bizarre. Yes, I'm trying to get the word out there. But I did read something at the time when I was delving into Spencer Jones' biog. But no, I'm afraid I don't have a satisfying answer. But it's just a nice little device, if nothing else. There may well be some story behind it, but.
The explanations, or you've just added a third one. There are only two that I could think of, but the third one, of course, is that they wanted Ricky Gervais, as you rightly said, but couldn't afford him or he wasn't available or whatever. But I either thought it was Ben Elton having a dig at Ricky Gervais, always talking about his Golden Globes and all, and all the rest of it, and he thought, right, I've got to, he'd either met him or he kind of thought, right, I'll get you back, mate, and I'll stick this pastiche in this, it was the lines were, when they were rehearsing, the lines were delivered. You could imagine Spencer Jones is a bit off the wall, and he started to deliver them like that. And Ben Elton thought, actually, that's great. Can we do that? And I'll write more in, and I'll do a rewrite and make it more about, a kind of Ricky Gervais sort of thing. Those are the only things I could come up with to as to why he did it, because it's completely incongruous as well, isn't it? I mean, it's got nothing to do with Shakespeare.
No. All I could think, one thing I find in common with Ben Elton, Blackadder, and Ricky Gervais is they're quite happy to send up actors. They don't suffer love is gladly, do they?
No.
Because is it Blackadder Series 2 where they've got the superstitious actors who have to throw salt over their shoulders if someone says the M word, which is the title of a Scottish play.
Isn't the legendary Kenneth Connor one of those actors, isn't he? I think in Blackadder, didn't he?
I think you're right, yeah. He spooked me once. I had to mic him up once, and it was the early days of me as a sound man at TV Centre. Regular listeners to the Slab will indulge me, hopefully, either that or fast forward. And I had to, very often you're miking someone up with a personal mic, which has a clip with it. Occasionally, because of what they're wearing, you have to use a pin. And in my very early days as a sound man, whatever he was wearing, it didn't suit me clipping the personal mic to him, so I had to use a pin. And as I went through the material, he went, ah! The rotter! He got me, and he had such a cheeky glint in his eye. But I nearly fainted. Of course, he was just acting because he's an actor.
Well, if for anyone who doesn't know who Kenneth Connor is, if you've ever watched a Carry On film, he would probably be the one going.
And if anyone needed to play him in a Ben Elton sitcom, I think you'd be top of the list.
I must admit, a soft spot for Kenneth Connor. I thought he was a fabulous actor, really did. But yeah, I mean, can we talk about some of the downsides? I mean, we talked about how great this is, and you know, some of the upsides of it. And because I want your opinion on. I felt that scenes really dragged for me. I thought the scenes were really long and could have been edited to be a lot shorter, and we could have got, you know, a lot more scenes in, I guess, really. Did you get that sense of it at all or not?
Not at all, I have to be honest. Didn't occur to me at all. And this for me is quite telling. Obviously, I'm, more won over by it. I was really, really struggling to hone down the number of clips I wanted to include.
Okay.
And because I wanted to include that gag about the being in the horse and carriage and replacement donkey service and all of that. So no, I thought it was really rich in gags, which I mean that that's what a good comedy should be. I didn't even notice the scenes because for me it just I won't say it necessarily flew by, but it didn't sag for me. It obviously did for you, and I'm just trying to work out why.
It's interesting because I thought that the bit that you were talking about at the start, near the start, where he's talking about how the carriage was cancelled and was replaced by a donkey service, and that kind of went on and went on and went on. Past the point where I thought, like, I kind of get it now. You've kind of hammered this one paper thin, and that to me was part of the length of the scenes as well. I thought the scenes were quite long, and I thought that the gags very often were almost not quite to the point of being killed because they'd been so done in so many different ways, and that kind of spoiled it a bit for me as well. And very wordy, and I sound ridiculous saying, it's this thing about Shakespeare, and it's very wordy. I mean, that was what the whole thing and the whole manner was about. But a lot of David Mitchell's, who plays Shakespeare, a lot of David Mitchell, again, another guy who I think is absolutely fabulous. But I felt a lot of his dialogue was very, very wordy and very impenetrable, and I kind of felt myself drifting off. You didn't get that either, no?
No. He was given a lot of license because, being the central character and the writer. But I felt as if people haven't seen it, from what you're saying, they might think, that's a huge problem. It was obviously a problem for you. What I'm trying to say is there's a massive ongoing not device again, sorry, the brain's trying to catch up with the lacy gob, but essentially there's a massive sending up of Shakespeare. He's not the people aren't bowing and scraping before him. It's a kind of running gag that he's totally misunderstood, undervalued. People are trying to help him in the way that, you can have that one, or let me help you write a better play.
Why didn't you just say this or what? Yeah, I mean, that's the whole...
Everyone's got a view, haven't they?
Yeah, and that kind of works. But again, saying this is just one episode, there was a lot of that in one episode, and you kind of think through a series whether that'd have the same charm. I don't know. I mean, it's like they were talking about how it was illegal for girls to act, and there were at least 2 bites at the same gag, I felt, in different scenes. And I thought, you've kind of done that joke already. And I don't know whether because you get into that mentality then where you fold your arms, you go, right, now, come on, then entertain me. Yeah. Which is a bit unfair, really. So, I let it, I just mention it, I just throw it out there. I just kind of felt that was an issue. And then at other times, I kind of thought the dialogue was really sharp, the acting was the delivery was really sharp. It was kind of like a little bit of a roller coaster for me in that sense.
Right. I thought very well delineated characters, and I just thought it was. I'm trying to stop myself use the term masterpiece because it wasn't flawless, but the niggles for me didn't get in the way, and I really enjoyed it. Well, let's get to clip 3 here, and what you say is, quite rightly, there is more than one reference to ladies can't play ladies can't act, that sort of thing. And here, Kate, who I should say is the daughter of the woman who looks after William Shakespeare's London lodgings. She's obviously got this ambition to be an actor. And here we have the ultimate moment for me where Ben says, well, Shakespeare died yonks ago, he's out of copyright. Wouldn't it be nice to have some proper Shakespeare for a bit? So here we go. This is Kate.
Sweet good night. This bud of love, by summer's ripening breath, may prove a beauteous flower when next we meet. Good night, good night. A sweet repose and rest come to thy heart, as that within my breast.
Sorry, Mr. Sauce Quickly, that does it. Kate's the one for me. I shall stand beneath Kate's balcony and strum my lute.
If that's a figure of speech, don't let the watchman catch you.
Oh, well, in that case, perhaps I'll just play us some music.
Oh, that Yorick was a bit of a geezer, wasn't he?
Alas.
Yeah, that gag, I'd made him a notes as well, that kind of, I'll go and strum my lute. Oh, that's a euphemism. I thought, oh, it's a bit obvious, isn't it? When she was doing
you wouldn't say that about a carry-on, would you?
No, but I mean, that was kind of, wouldn't you put this on a higher plane than the carry-on?
Well, I've tried to, and you were trying to take it down from that higher plane. He should have called it Carry On Crow. Carry On Crow. No, it doesn't work. It could be made into a gag in the right hands, couldn't it?
Don't you think as well, you also... I always get the impression with Ben Elton stuff that he's always trying to show you how clever he is. I used to work with... not work with somebody. I used to work at the same radio station as somebody who should remain nameless. But whenever they used to make me cry with laughter, because whenever they used to interview somebody... And don't worry, this isn't the story about you. The way you were looking at me then, as if she's like, looking daggers at me, folks.
Was it obvious?
Yeah. And he was used to, I'll tell you off air, he used to interview somebody and he'd ask a question and say, because I think blah, blah, blah. And he'd always try and show them, whoever he was talking to, that he knew more than they did about what they'd come on to talk about, which kind of defeats the whole point of you bothering to interview them, really. Why don't you just tell people what you know about it? And I always get that kind of sense with Ben Elton that he's always trying to go, well, look how clever I am, really. And there was like a reference, something that referenced to sonnets 1 to 126. And I thought, I haven't got the first idea what you're on about, mate. And I think there's a big part of it that if you're not a Shakespeare fan, as I'm not, that you really miss out, you really lose out. I don't know whether there's a way around that, and I don't know whether I'm even being critical about it, but you'd concede that, wouldn't you? That you have to be, he's kind of going, look how clever I am. I know so much Shakespeare. Look, I'm brilliant.
You mean you don't know sonnet 116?
Not. I mean, obviously, I know the rough contents of it.
It's the only one that can be read at weddings. It was read at mine, but then obviously it didn't. The effect didn't quite last a decade. But I can't quote it now. But yeah, I'm teasing you back. What can I say? If that's just a passing reference, I mean, otherwise we get into. You would be complaining if he said, I am William Shakespeare. I am a playwright. I have written 37 plays. I'm from Stratford-upon-Avon.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's the phrase is lowest common denominator, isn't it? You can't assume zero knowledge. And anyway, as you would say, Google it!
Yeah.
Your catchphrase to your poor kids.
That's all I said. Just go Google it. Don't bother me. I do wonder whether there's a line this side of I am William Shakespeare. I am from Stratford-on-Avon, and there's a line the other side of referencing sonnets 1 to 126. I don't know. I just kind of felt a lot of it, and went over my head. And I'll be honest. I mean, I think I have more than the average person's passing interest in kind of all things. And I think if it's gone over my head, I think it's probably gone over the head of quite a lot of the audience, maybe. I've just finished reading Stephen Fry and one of his books, one of his biographies, and he said, because, I mean, he's such a lovey, isn't he? I mean, I don't know how he and Ben Elton, if Ben Elton takes the mickey out of loveys, get on. But he said, I do wish the press and the public wouldn't go on about Ben Elton because he's so clever and he's such a poppet. And I thought, that kind of sums it up, didn't it?
That sums it up for you. Confirming your worst fears. What can one say? Well, I'm bound to do a hashtag name drop and to say that, having worked, did you ever see any of Man from Auntie? Of course, all my anecdotes are in the dark past now.
Do you know I did, but I can't remember. It was Ben Elton's thing, wasn't it? Was it his stand up and sketches? Was it? I can't.
Yeah, it was both. And I do remember him actually doing a sketch on a train. And I use this illustration because, just quickly, on the night, I was, whatever I was doing on that show, looking after radio mics, I think. Not Kenneth Connor in that particular series, but... this whole sequence, a very complicated sequence, which they, as far as possible, the Beeb loves running things to their credit, as much as they can, where possible, in front of a live studio audience. That much is true. And you can't always do that, and you have to stop-start sometimes and all that. I thought it had gone fine. I couldn't believe... I was as surprised as Ben when he was told... I was on Talkback. He would have been told via the floor manager that the director wanted us to go again. I couldn't say anything wrong. Did he kick up a stink as the star of the show? I vividly remember. I mean, no fuss at all. Just... He might have rolled his eyes heavenward for a moment. And then after the show, I remember de-rigging, and it was just me and Ben. I must have been coiling some cables. And I remember he was wiping off his makeup, darling. And all he said to me was, "Oh, God, that having to go again on that train thing." And that was it. Little gripe, but no, "Oh, my God, my life's so terrible." And that is, for me, the measure of the man. He could have really mouthed off. No one else was listening. He could have done his, strutting off the stage and, I think methinks he doth protest too much. But he didn't. And so he's a man who's got his ego in check, I would say, well in check, but very talented.
I think, and I think people who speak of him, including Stephen Fry, who thinks a lot of people are puppets that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, or judging by his book anyway. I kind of, everyone who knows Ben Elton, I think you're right, kind of speaks highly of him. I do, however, and I think this is always stuck in the back of my mind. I remember thinking it at the time, and I certainly think it now, that I had a real problem with people like Ben Elton and Alexei Sale, and probably Adrian Edmondson and Rick Mail at the time, and all the people,
all his mates,
basically all the people who decided that not only were they going to be, and I never had a problem with them deciding they were going to be the new generation of comedy, but they decided that everything that went before them was racist and sexist and vile and they finished a lot of people's careers, including a very funny guy called Bobby Davro, who kind of got caught up in all of this. And it was like, they couldn't just be the next generation. They had to be the next generation and burn everything behind them. And I never really forgave them for that. I kind of thought that was unforgivable, because a lot of our comedy heritage went up in smoke as a result of that and was tainted. And I thought that was wrong. But
Well,
you know.
yeah. I mean, I don't suppose you saw Ben Elton give the was it the inaugural, the Ronnie Barker lecture, so called?
No.
On the Beeb, and again with a degree of modesty, he said words to the effect, "Oh, I'm a bit of a fraud being here at the Ronnie Barker lecture because Ronnie looked at whoever it was next to him once in rehearsal, either Stephen Fry or one of the people you've mentioned, and said, 'I like you,' and Ronnie Barker turned to Ben Elton and said, 'I don't like you.'"
Right.
Probably for the very reasons the trying to burn it up as the past and all that. I think Mr. Corbett was a bit more forgiving, but not the 9 o'clock news sent them all up. I
remember Ronnie Barker was furious with Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones because they did the two Ronnies.
Oh, they sent up with a production number.
Dancing, and the song at the end, and apparently I don't think Ronnie Barker ever forgave them for that. He thought it was, and because they were all on the same side, aren't they? And I do kind of think that was completely unnecessary. I think that was, and do you know the thing that really stuck in my craw at the time and even now is that. And I think he's a very clever man, but Alexei Sale wasn't funny. And hello, John got a new motor and all this kind of thing, and it was almost like the Emperor's New Clothes. It was like, because we were the new wave. I mean, French and Saunders, the vast majority of that was just unwatchable in the early days, was just awful. And, they do a lot of these things. And the Dangerous Brothers, Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson and all of that kind of... You think, oh, man, and this is the future. I had the same feeling when punk... I'd learnt to play the guitar and punk came out and I thought, oh, that was a waste of time learning to play the guitar then, if this is the future of music. But, yeah, and so that... at least he has the good grace to remember his actions and reference them, I suppose. But
yeah, but actually they did become friends subsequently, so they made their peace.
Good.
My critique, just quickly, would be more that not that they've ever claimed it, but I would be frustrated if I was a younger generation comedian to look at them and how they've just become the establishment. Well, that's how the world works. At one stage the Beatles were cutting edge, and that's how new life comes along, a new culture. But I wondered whether, for me, it felt such a total takeover. Must all have brilliant agents, by the way, but that there wasn't room for anyone else. And to an extent, it's a bit like the older generation having nice pensions and nice houses and all of that. It's obviously hugely more complicated than that, but it's like, well, the rest of you can go hang kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, who needs a good agent when you all went to the right school?
Well, I was going to ask you. Time is running out, but he's trying to do a bit of social critique here, isn't he? I haven't talked much about the plot. People hopefully will get to see the show, but he's having a pop at people who go to Oxbridge, and that's what's going on in this show, and sending up posh English boy. And you think, actually, he's kind of having his cake and eating it, to coin a phrase, because Ben's dad is... I hope he's still with us. I'm not sure he was, but I did actually see him. Another name drop. You get to see people's parents as well as work with the stars. So his parents came to see his show, and his dad's he's from posh stock, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, however they pretend they're not, they generally are, aren't they? And the more well, reading Stephen Fry's book, I mean, he's a masterclass in how the class system works and how it works through education, and that you don't mind that. It's a bit like the Tories in the 80s, all talking about being the party of family values and off having affairs with each other. It's the hypocrisy that people can't bear, isn't it, in these kind of situations? Not their background or where they came from. But anyway, is it time for the numbers? I think it probably is.
I think we've mouthed off enough.
Yes. Isn't it? Do you know what I have to say quickly? It's very interesting. I always think how some comedy programs evoke more of the backdrop and the background of the people who make it, and other comedy programs that we critique, we focus much more on the program at hand. It's quite interesting. Maybe it's because we know the heritage of some of the people. But yeah, I always think
I think that's an interesting part of it, though, which is why we do this show, because we love comedy. But why do we do that more time? Yeah, I think you've kind of answered the question there, but I do find that fascinating. And if people find us a bit too analytical, that's kind of how we are, isn't it, really? But we do it. We enjoy a good belly laugh as well, so it's a bit of both.
If we wanted to be popular, we wouldn't have worked with each other. That's obvious, isn't it?
No, exactly. And any suggestions of bitterness, we will deny with our fingers crossed. So I'm going to give it 4 out of 5.
All right.
I really enjoyed it, and the test for me is we always listen to or watch, whether it's radio or TV, podcast, whatever it is, appropriately, a second time. And it was a treat coming to it a second time. It was a treat even making the clips, because I was just enjoying the craftsmanship of the writing and the performing. Loved it.
Despite the fact that it had got some of my favourite comedy actors in, people like Steve Speirs.
Sorry, excuse my ignorance.
Steve Speirs is the Welsh guy. He's the big Welsh guy. He played a fabulous cameo. Yeah, he played a fabulous cameo in with Ricky Gervais, actually, curiously enough, in Extras, where he was a guy that Ricky Gervais' character felt sorry for, and they ended up going out to dinner together. It was just brilliant. That was the first thing I ever saw him in. Spencer Jones, of course. Dominic Coleman played Condell, who I just
the lady
love.
Man.
Dominic Coleman, just a funny guy. And great cast, but I couldn't get over the things that I couldn't get over,
I think we'll hear that.
And I fully accept that, if somebody comes back and says, actually, it's you, not that, then I accept that. But, as we always say, you can't like everything. And, all my prejudices came at once on this particular occasion. Despite that, I'd still give it a 2. I wouldn't give it a low score, but I'd give it a 2 and the really weird thing is I'll give it a 2 and I'm going to go back and try the rest of Series 1 as well. So...
That's the kind of freak you are, yeah.
What a freak I am, yes. That's what a complete weirdo, but that's me, I'm afraid.
No, I think that's greatly to your credit. You haven't written it off. We'll be interested to know, maybe we'll chase this up in future slabs, whether you would mark any further episodes you see any higher than 2 out of 5. So we're talking a pass mark at least of 6 out of 10 between us. So it must be, talking of marks and so on, it must be time for the homework for me for next week.
Yeah, time for the homework for next week then. It's one that we have mentioned on many an occasion. We've referenced on what are we on? We're on episode 66 now of the Comedy Slab podcast. And I think we've mentioned it more than a few times on the previous 65 episodes when we've referenced other people's work, and we're going back to radio, and we're going back to a character created by a guy, and you'll get it straight away when I say this, by a guy called Steve Delaney.
Carry on. Sorry, the mind's not quite keeping up. But
I must admit I do that all the while. I go ooh, but Steve Delaney, and he has created. Do you want me to tell you, or do you want me to tease you a bit more, so if you can guess what it is?
Clue, because if as you say, and I'm sure it's the case, we've referenced it before. That should lodge somewhere in my pinky matter.
Okay, well, he's sorry about that. Something's just bonged then. I don't know what it was. Just reminded me of something or other. This is actually it was a radio series first. It was a very different television series. I think that was one of the references we made quite recently. It's about a central character who is not a young man, but like yourself, he's a bit of a name dropper. He's worked with some of the best.
Surely not.
And the greatest in the industry. He wears a little pork pie.
This wouldn't be Ed Reardon?
No, you're on the right. You're on the right kind of lines. He wears a pork pie hat and glasses. And I'm not going to have to tell you who it is. I think
it's not. I'm not getting the hat and glasses, because if I know it from the radio,
he uses a title to which he's not really. We don't think able to use, but he certainly calls himself this. I'm going to tell you.
Sorry.
It's Count Arthur Strong's radio
I
show.
very nearly said that, but you actually threw me by making a reference to visuals, and I was thinking this is radio, so my brain couldn't cope with that. Yeah, 'cause, yes, in my ignorance, I wasn't connecting the actor's name. I'm not sure all the times I'd listened to it that I ever even knew his name.
Well, he does keep quite a low profile, actually. He's not. I mean, I've kind of tried to hunt out.
And has he done many other things?
I don't think he's done anything other than Count Arthur Strong. But I mean, I've tried to dig out interviews of him, and they're very few and far between. But yeah, so I thought, well, we'll go for series 1. And I looked at the episodes on series 1, and I thought, what is it that would strike a resonant chord with the both of us? And it's an episode called Radio Play. It's series 1, episode 3, and it's called Radio Play. Count Arthur Strong's radio show is your homework for next week.
Lovely stuff. We are on anti-social media. So tweet us up or follow us or do something in that vein. Try and keep it vaguely within the bounds of human decency. We are at Comedy Slab. What a shock. On Twitter, and likewise at Comedy Slab on Facebook. And perhaps you'd be good enough to, as well as following us on Twitter, to like said Facebook page. And also, personal recommendation always goes a long way. That's gold dust to us. So if, as we hope is the case, you've enjoyed the Comedy Slab with me and Shane, just share it with your friends. Share and share alike.
And don't forget, if you want to hear any of those previous 65 episodes, or if maybe you want to hear this one again, we're on Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube. In fact, I'm sure if you've got one of those smart fridges, if you open the door and then leave the freezer slightly ajar, we'll come on there as well, and you'll be able to hear us or something like that. But yeah, you can get all the previous episodes as well.
You might want to try that phrase. Hey, Google, play Comedy Slab.
Yeah.
I haven't tried it myself, but I'm used to talking to myself.
I did. It just said no.
Never heard of them, it said. And so, dear friends, 2 households, both alike in dignity, in fair... Anyway, well, that's just about it from us, isn't it?
I'm off out into the garden where we're having a dancing party. And in a canvas-covered area, because now is the winter of our disco tent.
Oh, didn't see that coming. That is outrageously awful. Kindly leave the stage. And I'm going to exit on the left of your stereo stage, pursued by a bear with a staff or a staff.
Don't forget it's a knobbly one.
Oh, matron.